Okay, so in the last video, we were taking a little bit of a look at some of these coordination practices. We took the geometry from a linked file, we bound it, we took that group, we ungrouped it, and essentially what we were looking at was a new model. So we had some links in here, but we also had all this new geometry that came from an architectural link. We removed the architecture, so we still have a couple links in here. But what I want to take a look at now is the use of view templates with views predefined and established already. And so if you take a look over here on the right, I've got my coordination plans. But let's just say the bad thing happens and somebody purges out, they strip the views, or they do something in an e-transmit, and now I'm dealing with a file that doesn't have any views because they were never on sheets or whatever. Bad things can happen, and sometimes people make mistakes. So what we want to do is be nimble with the software. And really, when you have view templates and you have predefined views, as long as they're coordination views, it's not that big of a deal if they get tossed out, because these essentially are for throwaways, or they're work in progress. So one of the things that I would specify or stress with coordination views is, if you're going to move a coordination view or create one, rename it so that nobody goes in and deletes it or changes your settings on it. So for example, I've set up a view filter to make these coordination sections red, and that's so I can easily identify something that I'm allowed to move, or it's okay to modify its settings, because this guy is just called section northwest. It's meant to move around. But if I wanted to ensure that nobody messed with this one, then maybe I'd want to throw my name at the end of it. Okay, so for example, maybe I wanted to cut a section through this stair. So when I choose my section tool, whether it's from the quick access menu or from the view tab, I want to make sure that I select the predefined view first. That way it chooses the right view type. So if it's a coordination section, I already have that view type created. So I choose that first. And then this part is important. You want to make sure that your view type settings are set so that they have a view template applied. And this way I know that all of these settings that are applied to that view template will apply to the view that I'm about to create. And one of those is view filters. So it's the view filter that is actually making my section line red here. And it's being satisfied by the criteria that that view type is called coordination section. So anyway, now that I have that all displayed and I know that that's verified and good to go, I can draw my section through this stairwell. This is an interesting plan. You may expect to see these grid lines, but because of the radial nature of this grid, we might not, and it's because they're not perpendicular to the screen. So just going back to that plan that I was just at when I created this, if I hover over this grid here, this is LB, this is LC, this is LD. In my section, the only one that I'm seeing is LA. So that's interesting. Which one is that down here? So that's the outermost, is the only one that I'm actually showing perpendicular to my section cut up here. So I don't really think we're going to get all of these, because like I said, they're radial, they're not quite parallel. And if I wanted to ensure that they were parallel or just test that out, I could do that with a dimension. And you'll notice that when I get over to this other guy, the align dimension is not working for me. Okay, but if I go to the angular, what do I get? Way up here, do I get anything? This is embarrassing. here I am trying to create dimensions, or dimensions on in this view template. No, they're not. So something to consider when you're trying to make a dimension is, can you actually create one? Or if you create one, are you going to see it? So let's try this again. There we go. So very slightly you can tell that these actually are not parallel. So it's a good little test. But I do remember that one kind of coming up. Why can't I see these grids? And they were ever so slightly off of 90 degrees or off normal. And then we couldn't see it. So that was a good visibility conundrum. So a feature though that is available or became available not too long ago is the ability to align sections. So if I want to make sure that I'm totally perpendicular to this staircase, I can use my align tool. I should be able to grab one of the outside edges. So you can see how that popped in there and aligned. So that's nice. You could use a reference plane or a reference line as well to get that. But I'm not really overly concerned about how this thing is actually going to work. I just wanted to illustrate that if I'm putting in this section, this coordination section to work on whatever, and I don't want anybody to mess with it, then I don't want to leave it as section 3. I want to actually call it stair section working, and then put your name in it so that nobody comes along and just deletes it. Because if they see section 3 through 23 or whatever, they may decide that, well, these are just work in progress. Whereas if I've got my name on it, somebody might be more inclined to leave it alone. Okay, so creating coordination sections, if you have them already predefined, the view type and the view template, then these become quite helpful. Very quickly you can turn these on and then use your temporarily apply template properties to see what this might look like as a stair section. So if I come in here and turn this over to my wall stair section view template, I can get an indication as to how that's going to look, and then flip that back over simply by restoring it back to the coordination view template. So you can see the graphics here isn't exactly desirable where the structural model intersects with my architectural. Okay, so somebody does the bad thing and they purge this, they deleted all of these. Is it terrible? Not really. Just because of what I was just saying, like all of these other views, if they were deleted, we could recreate them pretty quick. What we can't recreate is all the annotations and dimensions and any symbols, detailing that's put on them, because that's with the view, and if the view goes, that can't really be recovered. The geometry though, however, what you see of the model will be there. So as far as coordination views, you're not really annotating those, so it's not quite as bad. So let's go see what we might do. If we were going to need new coordination plans, again, we'd come back up here to plan views, and under floor plan, you see that I have a number of view types already created. So coordination plans are going to obviously appear a little bit different than a schematic floor plan, because again, the type of view, which system family is floor plan, this type coordination plan has a view template that is working in tandem with it. So it's supposed to do a whole bunch of things. One of those things is where it's positioned in the project browser. So I know that if this check mark is engaged, then the project stage parameter is going to work with my browser organization to make sure that these plans go right up here under the coordination bucket. So if I'm happy with all of that and I can see these in the list, then I know I don't have any coordination plans to go with these. So I'm going to select all of the views, hit OK, and then I should see a new folder, which I can expand. And then I've got these brackets in here. And the reason why is because I went ahead and probably created floor plans, which already have the name level 1 based after the associated datum, right? So when we select a floor plan and we want to see what datum it's associated to, we can simply come over here to its extents and you see the associated level. So Revit decides to put a bracketed suffix at the end of these so that it can differentiate between these. What I do is just rename these. So you can do that by coming down here, and I'll put in like a -C or something to identify it as a coordination plan. But I typically don't do that here. I would typically go to a view list, and you can do that. We've got some model management schedules. I'm going to go into my report, and because again the view template is applied to all of these, it puts them into the right bucket. And just want to rename them, and I should be able to do that here quite quickly just by copying and pasting only the figures that I want, highlighting over, and this goes pretty quick. So the other way of going about this would be to have a rename script or something to that effect, but I think I would only maybe even consider that if I was working in high rise, and that's just because there's so many levels involved. But otherwise it's relatively easy just to copy and paste that identifier into these and move on. So there you have it. There's some coordination plan views for us to work with, and if we needed to, we can move around our coordination sections. And just to kind of expand on this a little bit, if I was to go into a coordination section, there may not be every little bit of this view template locked down at a certain point in the project. If I'm not doing any coordination, then I might want to keep these things actually unchecked so that I can turn element categories on and off. But I think for the most part, you want to have the aspects of your view template that are not dynamic. That's kind of what you want your starting point to be. So things like the annotation categories that you're going to want to be able to see and use, like for instance dimensions. It's not like you're going to annotate a coordination view, but you may want to put a dimension down in order to show a distance. So maybe you do want to have annotation categories on, but not all of them. Another one to consider is the analytical model categories. Maybe you have analytical elements, but does it really help you to have those on in this view type? No. So I would probably keep that off altogether, and then make sure that there is a check mark beside analytical so that it doesn't ever show analytical elements. One of the other ones that you may not want on is the Revit links, because you may want to be able to modify these by view. So in that case, when you hit VV to modify the visibility graphics, you see certain tabs are locked down because they're engaged by the view template, whereas the other ones in this case aren't. So I could turn off just my structural model for this situation to see what's actually happening here. And this is a rare thing to see where the floors and certain walls are actually only in the structural model. So suddenly these things seem to be unsupported. So anyway, that's more or less view types in tandem with view templates. Let's take a look at another similar but slightly different approach to this. Let's say I'm trying to populate a model with 3D views for coordination specifics. I could, select certain elements in a plan view. So let's take a look at how I might do that. If I come over here and I see these photovoltaics, and I select these two, well, that was a pretty good spot. I didn't actually notice that before. But if I come in here, I would like to be able to use the box tool, but I might not be able to do that with linked elements. So let's just give this a shot. So this is the box tool here, or section box, and you can get the shortcut version of that with the keyboard shortcut BX, I believe. And what that does is it just highlights these elements that are here in the view. So This one has come in as liminal 1 because that's my default, and I've got all these extra levels in here which make this view somewhat unruly. So I want to just select the levels, and actually I do want to see that one level over here by the link. So I'm just going to select the levels in the host model and hit EH, because what I'm doing in this view I want to be permanent. I'm about to make a new view out of this. So if I'm trying to highlight that there is a bit of a problem with the clash between this equipment or these photovoltaics and this mechanical equipment, I need to bring attention to that. But I don't know if people are going to be able to see what I'm talking about here. So I want to be able to provide a bit of context, and that's why I left the level 7A in there. But the other thing is there a section box? So the section box that I'm using was hidden because of the view template. So by overriding the by using the reveal hidden elements toggle, I'm able to see that, and I can just add in a little bit more context around this mechanical equipment to make it a little bit easier to see what we're actually talking about here. Okay, so anybody working on this project a little bit more intimately would know this area. When we toggle back, you can see quite clearly that we've got some clashes here, so these groups of photovoltaics would need to be addressed. So what I would do is rename this view to prefix with the disciplines involved. So maybe it's going to obviously be mechanical _ architecture, and then I give the view name something like mech equipment versus photovoltaics. Now what happens with this is this becomes a new view, so that if I move on now with my coordination and I'm taking a look at other aspects of this plan, I can simply keep creating these 3D views. So it looks okay over here. If I go to the next level down, maybe there's something else that I want to take a look at, like a clearance or something, then again you can start to make more 3D views of those specific areas. But one of the things to consider though, again, is this element that I just selected. You can see how it's gray. It's actually from the mechanical link, so it won't let me do my box tool. So it could be that you may have to have an element in there. It would be the ideal situation where you have a clash. Let's just say we wanted to take a look at this stairwell, then we could use the stairwell and the surrounding wall with our box tool. Again, you could type BX. But now this is going to reinstate that 3D liminal 1 view name by default because that's my username. And then again, you see the scope box and these levels in here. So if I find myself doing this over and over again, where I'm always shutting the levels off, it may be a good idea for me to go to this view template and just shut off that work set, shared levels and grids. I'll hide that. And for now on, when I make these new view views for 3D, I don't see the levels from my model. I only see them from the link that I'm coordinating with. But the other thing in here is the scope box, and they're handy a lot of the time, but right now I'm deciding that it's kind of making my view unwieldy, so I'm going to shut that off as well. The section box is on, but I have it set to a halftone, and that's okay. That makes things a little bit easier to manipulate. So now you can see I can easily come in here, cut the section using the box to see if what I'm actually interrogating is okay. Alright, so again, I would just change the name to Stair 1 3D, and then maybe cut that back just a little bit. Now I can see into that, that stairwell. Okay, so that is using the box command. Super handy feature. I use it a lot to set up coordination views. But there's another one that's also really handy, which helps navigate and helps you kind of whip around the model quickly to see what you need to see. And that is the orient to view. So we talked a little bit about these coordination sections. And I had created a section earlier called stair section working Travis. So I'm working diligently on this one, and then somebody says, hey, can you take a look at the other one? Well, I can do that quite easily. I'll just keep the settings on this, so maybe I'll duplicate this view and change the name of it to stair 4, because maybe that's what it's called. But now I can simply go to my view cube and say orient to view and use any previously created view as the section plane. So I can see here's my stair section working Travis, and I can flip over to that section, which I don't think is this one that I'm currently working on. But now I have this in a 3D format that I can interrogate it a little bit more. And again, here's my section box, which is not quite parallel. Well, it's this plane here is obviously along the section plane. But again, we do have that radial grid in here, so it makes for an interesting study. But I don't need all of this, obviously, so when I cut my section back, I should see the levels come with it as well. And then there's some other handy features like leveraging these here, the temporary hide isolate or not. So if it's just the stair tower, maybe you want the railings and the stair, you can say IC, and that isolates the category, and now you're really getting into nitty-gritty if you want to just take a look at that miscellaneous steel or a certain part of the model. So yeah, orient to view, super powerful feature. And you just want to remember to always change the name of your view, because whenever you click back to the default 3D view, it's always going to go back to what your username is, which is super handy. But this oriented view gives you the option to do this with floor plans, elevations, but I think it's really powerful with sections and floor plans to show visual context of what's happening on the inside and outside of a building at the same time. So anyway, that's a little bit of navigation and keeping in a flow state while you're trying to navigate through your model, and leveraging what you know of your view types, your view templates, and your browser organization to kind of bring that all together for a nice smooth experience. So anyway, I hope you learned a couple things and you enjoyed. We'll be back soon, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching.